Also, this past week, we sat down with retired New York State Police Major Charles Guess, who was the commander of Troop B in Raybrook in 2015 and was the incident commander for the escape and manhunt.
Early on, we didn't know what we didn't know. We didn't know if they were holed up, to use that term, in the village of Dannemora. So we locked down the village. We had to go, extensively through house-to-house searches. And so as this all evolved, we had the investigative side going as well, which obviously meant looking at contacts of the inmates in the prison, outside the prison, and to determine whether or not they had any help in the prison from civilian or Department of Correction employees, which was a separate but powerful and intense investigation in of itself that, bear fruit within a matter of days.
About 2 weeks into the manhunt, you had literally thousands of leads that you were following up on, but nothing solid, no confirmed sightings of the escapees. But then came the big break.
With 2 weeks with no confirmed leads, we finally got something which really turned the course of the investigation about on the 14th day, with a reported burglary or sighting in progress in Twisted Horn by an off-duty corrections officer who had an interest in a cabin out there. So he was going out to check his hunting cabin, as we had asked so many of our listeners at the time and the community members to do. And he saw two fellas scramble off the back deck and tear off into the woods. But along the way, because they weren't ready to be confronted, they dropped a number of items on the ground that our forensics teams and investigators collected, spirited off to the lab in Albany. And in very short order, about 13 and a half hours, we had confirmatory DNA results that, in fact, both Richard Matt and David Sweat were still together at that location.
It did take another week, but with the help of the Border Patrol team, you did capture and kill Richard Matt, and then State Police Sergeant Jay Cook shot and wounded David Sweat in the town of Constable and took him into custody. The manhunt was over after 23 days. As you look back now, 10 years later, what are your thoughts? Is there anything that you would have done different?
There are always lessons to be learned. And I can tell you the state police made a number of changes. Some of them were equipment and technology changes. Some of them were structural changes as to, who and what would be involved in and how we would connect with or communicate with our partners. So there's always lessons learned. Do I have regrets? No. And I say that cautiously because we did the best we could at the time with what we have.
And when it was finally over, do you remember what that felt like when it ended?
At that time, one of great relief. And by that, as the incident commander, I felt completely responsible for not only the 1,600 plus responders, law enforcement professionals under my command at the time, but clearly the members of the community, and the fact that no member of law enforcement of the community were seriously injured or hurt or killed in this endeavor was just an enormous relief to me. And it was no small feat, and I imagine a little good luck and fortune as well, but no small feat that these two, entered the wilds and forests of the Adirondacks within 6 hours of escape from arguably New York's toughest prison. And that within 23 days, we had both of them. There was every chance and possible expectation that we would never see either of them again, or they'd be found in another jurisdiction. So I was greatly relieved that nobody was hurt, none of the good guys anyway, and that we got them both back.
And fortunately, Jay Cook was on patrol and spotted David Sweat when he did.
I think it was beyond chance or luck to have a true professional like Jay Cook, former senior firearms instructor in Troop B, the local. He grew up and knew that area like the back of his hand. So when he spotted something out of the ordinary, he quickly recognized during his role, 23 days solid in the investigation, what it was, what action he had to take. He communicated back to his counterparts to request assistance, and then he took the necessary action. And just, having the right man at the right place at the right time, that's how I reflect on Jay Cook's service.
After retiring from the state police, you signed on as an advisor to director Ben Stiller, who by then was filming his miniseries, and you ultimately even agreed to play yourself in the series.
I got involved in that with no thought of playing myself, even in a cameo role. That came much later, and I felt a kind of a duty and an obligation, if you will, to represent the scale and scope of the manhunt accurately, particularly Jay Cook's role there at the end, and the Border Patrol's role in apprehending Richard Matt, and with the knowledge that both of them engaged and had to use deadly physical force during those apprehensions. And I just believed in my heart that it should be portrayed with accuracy. And so when I met with the then director, Ben Stiller, I said, and if he wanted me to be part of it, that I insisted on at least accuracy on the law enforcement side. Obviously, I couldn't comment, on what the occurrences in and around the prison, but the law enforcement side, if I was going to be involved, needed to be done correctly. And so he assured me that it would be, and it was. In fact, little known thought, the apprehension is depicted in the film actually involved the Border Patrol helicopter and the BORTAC members that were involved in 2015. So those camouflage folks were the team. So yeah, I got involved on the technical side, and then much later they said, well, we need to have somebody represent you, the major guest character, and you look the part, so why not do it? And I agreed. I'd been retired a couple of years by that point, and they actually, the wardrobe folks had to procure a uniform because troopers don't leave the job with a uniform. So yeah, they went about procuring the accoutrements and the uniform, and donning the uniform once again, standing on the scene in the middle of Route 30, directing traffic, so to speak. That was a surreal moment. That was very much like a short burst of that time all the way back in 2015. So while it was highly choreographed and structured by the filmmakers, it was a unique opportunity.
What would you say stands out for you? What do you remember the most about those 3 weeks?
I think the thing that was a pivotal point in the search and really stood out for me, thankfully, we were fortunate for it, was at day 14 when John Stockwell went out to his hunting cabin and was riding out there just to do a check, took his black Labrador Dolly with him on his ATV. And this time, unlike other times he'd gone to the cabin, he armed himself because he knew there was a threat in the region. And he rode 45 minutes off of Wolf Pond Road by ATV into the woods by himself, to check on his cabin. And arriving on the scene, seeing some furtive movements inside the cabin, hearing some movement as the two fugitives, which he didn't know at the time, but two intruders ran off the back deck. That was a turning point for the entire investigation. And I have to hand it, to his courage. He did the right thing. He held his ground. He challenged whoever was inside. He didn't attempt to pursue them, which was wise. And as soon as he saw it safe to do so, he distanced himself between those two fugitives, back on the ATV, got the dog, shot out to Wolf Pond Road, and got the message out to law enforcement so we could envelop that area as we did by ground units and by aviation assets. So, as you know, when I say day 14, that's 14 long days of running down a lot of leads and listening to a lot of the national media in particular say that the state police and law enforcement in general are wasting their time, that these guys are long gone, they're in Canada, they're in Mexico, we're just burning up assets and money, accomplishing nothing. Well, to the naysayers, I say, you may have been right. That was a possibility. But to the folks who stuck with us, the folks who believed in the community, that believed on our job, that we got to keep following every lead, that was a source of confidence for us going forward. It enabled everybody to get reinvigorated, if you will. Certainly anybody who was having doubts in the community or law enforcement got it straight in their mind that, nope, this thing's for real and it's still happening. And it enabled us to bring even additional resources to bear. And ultimately, I believe, with a good, bit of good fortune and luck, result in their capture.
You retired a few months after the manhunt. Did you follow the state investigation into the escape and read the Inspector General's report?
Read it cover to cover. I guess among several things, one that really stood out was that the IG, with the help of investigators, both from Docs and the state police who contributed on the interview side, deduced from David Sweat that he apparently was out of his cell some 85 nights that they calculated working on fabricating the escape. And so that's alarming to anyone. I'm sure would be alarming to correction officials and even the people walking the beat, so to speak, in the halls and on the tiers, to know that the system was so broken or lax at one point in time that an inmate could be unaccounted for that many nights and literally have the run of the place, so to speak, and in this case effectuate an escape. That was probably the one thing that I was not prepared to read.